We all know the story of Cain and Abel, but what about Adam and Eve's other 54 children? It is a tale that is often overlooked, but when we delve into it, things get pretty strange, especially when it comes to their daughters. While the Bible is considered by many to be a single, infallible document, it took the early Christian church over 400 years to determine which stories should be included in the sacred text. As a result, many newly converted Christians wrote books that did not make it into the final cut. One of these excluded texts is also known as the Book of the Daughters of Adam, and it sheds light on the often forgotten story of Adam and Eve's numerous offspring. In 494 AD, Pope Gelasius made it clear that the Book of the Daughters of Adam was not church approved, despite that it detailed the names and life stories of Adam's daughters. However, this text was not the only one to explore the lives of Adam and his family. Literature that has touched upon this subject has been popular for centuries, as explained by the book The Many Faces of Christ, the 1,000-year-old story of the survival and the influence of the lost Gospels. Other texts also mention Adam and Eve's daughters, include the Jewish book of Jubals and the conflict of Adam and Eve's with Satan, among others. Although people know about Cain and Abel, there was clearly an interest in learning about these women. Unfortunately, the Book of Daughters of Adam has been lost to history. However, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, which has survived and was included in the Forgotten Books of Eden in 1926, explicitly states when Adam and Eve's first daughter makes an appearance. According to the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, after being expelled from the Garden of Eden, Eve gives birth to twins, a boy named Cain and a girl named Luluwa. This is different from the account in the Bible, where Eve only gives birth to a son. Adam and Eve named their children 8 days after their birth. After Cain and Luluwa finished breastfeeding, Eve became pregnant again and gave birth to another son named Abel and a daughter named Aklia. The text does not provide any explanation for the meanings of the names or whether there was any conflict between the siblings in the womb. The chapter on Abel and Aklia's birth also mentions that Eve stopped having children after their birth, but this changes when she gives birth to Seth as a replacement for Abel after his murder. Overall, while the Bible only mentions one son born to Adam and Eve, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan depicts the first birth on earth as being twins, a boy and a girl, and adds more children to the family. According to the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, there were no more offsprings after Abel and Aklia's birth, which contradicts the account in the Bible. One of the Bible's unexplained mysteries is where Cain's wife comes from. If he didn't marry his mother, the only possibility is that he married one of his sisters. Cain's twin sister Luluwa was an option, but she ended up marrying Abel before he was killed. The text claims that Luluwa was the cause of Abel's murder because Cain was furious that he would be stuck with Aklia while his brother got to marry the more attractive sister. Other texts trace the disagreement to Abel and Aklia's having a triplet sister and fighting over who would get a second wife. The conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan suggests that Cain was always cruel to Abel growing up, and when Satan told him that he could eliminate his only competition for Luluwa's affections, he tried to kill his brother multiple times. The text does not explain why or how he failed, but it suggests that perhaps killing a family member was more of an adult pursuit. After Cain killed Abel, Adam and Eve realized that their sons needed wives. When Cain found out that he had to marry Aklia, he cursed his mother. After Cain killed Abel, he was banished to wander in the land of Nod, where he suddenly found an unexplained, unnamed wife who appeared out of nowhere. In contrast, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan provides more detail, stating that after Cain killed Abel, he got to marry his twin sister, Luluwa, and the land of Nod isn't mentioned. They went to live near the place where Cain killed Abel, and that Cain and Luluwa had children who began to multiply and fill that place. To modern sensibilities, this seems like a premise straight out of a horror movie. Nonetheless, the text suggests that since there was a whole planet to populate, Cain and Luluwa had to continue to have children, while the book of Genesis briefly mentions that Cain and his wife had a son named Enoch, and that Cain built a city named after his son. Other sources, such as the Antiques of the Jews by Josephus, adds more details about what Cain did to Enoch. He accumulated wealth through violence, robbery, and pillaging, and became a leader of men, but he led them into wickedness. He invented weights, measures, and property boundaries, which led people practicing cunning craftiness. This suggests that Luluwa, who was married to Cain, lived a terrible life, as she would have been married to the most important man in the city with lots of money, but all of it was procured through evil means. After Abel's death and Cain's banishment, there were no more brothers for Aklia to marry. After dealing with the grief for 7 years, Adam and Eve had another child, a boy named Seth. According to the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, when Seth was 9 years old, Satan appeared and tempted him, but Seth resisted and told his parents. Adam then decided that his son needed a wife to keep him in line if Satan tempted again. The only available wife was Aklia, was apparently undesirable and was rejected by her own twin brother. However, Seth agreed to the marriage in obedience to his parents. The apocryphal additions to the story make sense and raise the question of whether there were more children. Interestingly, the Bible does provide an answer to this question, but it is not clear how many children Adam and Eve had besides Cain, Abel, Seth, and their daughters. According to Genesis chapter 5, verse 4, Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters after Seth was born, even though the official version of the Bible does not mention Luluah or Aklia. In Jewish tradition, it is recorded that Adam and Eve had 56 children, including 33 sons and 23 daughters, which made sense given God's command to be fruitful and multiply. The text, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, goes against what the Bible says directly, claiming that Adam and Eve only had 5 children and that Seth was the last. While the Bible contradicts itself frequently, one of the things that is clear about the outset is that the incest was not available. While people know about the 10 commandments, there were many more commandments that God gave to Moses. One of the commandments prohibits incest, with God listing 11 different variations of incest and explaining why each is unacceptable. One of the commandments prohibits incest, with God listing 11 different variations of incest and explaining why each is unacceptable. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 9 and chapter 20 verse 17 specifically prohibits sexual relationships between a man and his sister, whether she's the father or mother's daughter, and declares it a disgrace. This seems to contradict the story of Cain and Luluah, but from another perspective, they didn't break God's commandment because it wasn't declared at the time. Nonetheless, the situationship is still really weird and creepy. As we conclude this discussion on the biblical story of Adam and Eve's children, don't forget to check out our latest videos on the screen. And if you're interested in learning more about the ancient stories and Bible myths, we've got more videos coming out soon. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new upcoming content.